Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 137th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Shah Solomon drew near his capital, the folk decorated the city for him and for his son. So they entered in state, and the king, sitting in his throne with his son by his side, gave alms and largesse, and loosed all those who were in his jails. Then he held a second bridal for his son, and the sound of the singing women and players upon instruments was never silent for a whole month. And the tire women stinted not to adorn the Lady Dunya and display her in various dresses. And she tired not of displaying, nor did the women weary of gazing on her. Then Taj al-Muluk, after having foregathered a while with his father and mother, took up his sojourn with his wife, and they abode in all joyance of life and in fairest fortune, till there came to them the destroyer of all delights. Now, when Wazir Dandan had ended the tale of Taj al-Muluk and the Lady Dunya, Zau al-Makan said to him, "Of truth, it is the like of thee who lighten the mourner's heart, and who deserve to be the boon companions of kings, and to guide their policy in the right way." All this befell, and they were still besieging Constantinople, where they lay 4 whole years, till they yearned after their native land. And the troops murmured, being weary of vigil and besieging, and the endurance of fray and foray by night and by day. Then King Zau al-Makan summoned Rustam and Bahram and Tarkash, and when they were in presence bespoke them thus: "Know that we have lain here all these years, and we have not won to our wish. Nay, we have not gained increase of care and concern, for indeed we came, thinking to take our man boat for King Omar bin al-Nu-uman, and in so doing my brother Sharrkan was slain. So is our grief grown to sorrows twain, and our affliction to afflictions twain. All this came of the old woman Zat al-Dawai, for it was she who slew the Sultan and his kingdom, and carried off his wife, the Queen Sophia. Nor did this suffice her, but she must put another cheat on us, and cut the throat of my brother Sharrkan. And indeed, I have bound myself and sworn by the solemnest oaths that there is no help, but I take blood wit from her. What say ye?" They pondered the address and answered me. Then they bowed their heads and answered, "It is for Wazir Dandan to opine." So the minister came forward and said, "Know, O king of the age, it booteth us not to tarry here, and 'tis my counsel that we strike camp and return to our own home country, there to abide for a certain time, and after that we should return for a razzia upon the worshippers of idols." Replied the king, "This rede is right, for indeed the folk weary for a sight of their families, and I am another who is also troubled with yearning after my son Kanmakan and my brother's daughter Kuzia Fakan, for she is in Damascus, and I know not how her case is." When the troops heard this report, they rejoiced, and they blessed the Wazir Dandan. Then the king bade the crier call the retreat after 3 days. They fell to preparing the march, and on the 4th day they beat the big drums and unfurled the banners, and the army set forth, the Wazir Dandan in the van, and the king riding in the middle battle with the Grand Chamberlain by his side. And all journeyed without ceasing night and day till they reached Baghdad city. The folk rejoiced in their return, and care and fear ceased from them, whilst the stay-at-homes met the absentees, and each emir betook him to his own house. As for Zau al-Makan, he marched up to the palace, and went in to his son Kanmakan, who had now reached the age of 7, and who used to go down to the weapon plain and ride. As soon as the king was rested of his journey, he entered the hamam with his son, and returning, seated himself on his sofa of state, whilst the Wazir Dandan took up his station before him, and the emirs and lords of the realms presented themselves and stood in attendance upon him. Then Zau al-Makan called for his comrade the fireman, who had befriended him in his wanderings, and when he came into presence, the king rose to do him honor and seated him by his side. Now he acquainted the Wazir with all the kindness and good turns which the stoker had done him, and he found that the wight had waxed fat and burly with rest and good fare, so that his neck was like an elephant's throat, and his face was like a dolphin's belly. Moreover, he was grown dull of wit, for that he had never stirred from his place, so at first he knew not the king by his aspect. But Zau al-Muluk came up with a smiling in his face, and greeted him after the friendliest fashion, saying, "How soon hast thou forgotten me?" With this, the fireman roused himself and looked steadfastly at Zau al-Muluk, made sure that he knew him, whereupon he sprang hastily to his feet and exclaimed, "O my friend, who hath made thee sultan?" Then Zau al-Muluk laughed at him, and the Wazir coming up to him expounded the whole story to him and said, "In good sooth, he was thy brother and thy friend, and now he is king of the land, and needs must thou get great good of him. So I charge thee, if he say, Ask a boon of me, ask not for some great thing, for thou art very dear to him." Quoth the fireman, "I fear lest if I ask of him aught, he may not choose to give it, or may not be able to grant it." Quoth the Wazir, "Have no care. Whatsoever thou askest, he will give thee." Rejoined the stoker, "By Allah, I must at once ask of him a thing that is in my thought. Every night I dream of it, and I implore Almighty Allah to vouchsafe it to me." Said the Wazir, "Take heart, by Allah. If thou ask of him the government of Damascus in place of his brother, he would surely give it to thee, and make thee governor." With this, the stoker rose to his feet, and Zau al-Muluk signed him to sit, but he refused, saying, "Allah forfend! The days are gone by of my sitting in thy presence." Answered the Sultan, "Not so, they endure even now. Thou wast in very deed the cause that I am at present alive, and by Allah, whatever thing thou most desirest, thou requirest of me, I will give that same to thee. But ask thou first of Allah, and then of me." He said, "O my lord, I fear." "Fear not," quoth the Sultan. He continued, "I fear to ask aught that thou shouldest refuse it to me, and it is only—" At this the king laughed and replied, "If thou require of me half of my kingdom, I would share it with thee. So ask what thou wilt, and leave talking." Repeated the fireman, "I fear—" "Don't fear," quoth the king. He went on, "I fear lest I ask a thing, and thou be not able to grant it." Upon this the Sultan waxed wroth and cried, "Ask what thou wilt." Then said he, "I ask first of Allah, and then of thee, that thou write me a patent of syndicate over all the firemen of the baths in the holy city Jerusalem." The Sultan and all present laughed, and Zau al-Muluk said, "Ask something more than this." He replied, "O my lord, said I fear that thou wouldst not choose to give me what I asked, or that thou be able to grant it." Therewith the Wazir signed him with his foot once and twice and thrice, and every time he began, "I ask of thee," quoth the Sultan, "Ask and be speedy." So he said, "I ask thee to make me chief of the scavengers in the holy city of Jerusalem, or in Damascus town." Then all those who were present fell on their backs with laughter, and the Wazir beat him, whereupon he turned to the minister and said to him, "What art thou that thou shouldest beat me? 'Tis no fault of mine. Didst thou not thyself bid me to ask some important thing?" And he added, "Let me go to my own land." With this the Sultan knew that he was jesting, and took patience with him a while, then turned to him and said, "O my brother, ask of me some important thing befitting our dignity." So the stoker said, "O king of the age, I ask first of Allah, and then of thee, that thou make me viceroy of Damascus in the place of thy brother." And the king replied, "Allah granteth thee this." Thereupon the fireman kissed ground before him, and he bade set him a chair in his rank, and vested him with a viceroy's habit. Then he wrote him a patent, and sealed it with his own seal, and said to Wazir Dandan, "None shall go with him but thou, and when thou makest the return journey, do thou bring thee my brother's daughter, Kuzia Fakan." "Hearkening and obedience," answered the minister, and taking the fireman went down with him and made ready for the march. Then the king appointed for the stoker servants and suite, and gave him a new litter and a princely equipage, and said to the emirs, "Whoso loveth me, let him honor this man and offer him a handsome present." So each and every one of the emirs brought him his gift according to his competence, and the king named him Zibil Khan, and conferred on him the honorable surname of al-Mujahid. As soon as the gear was ready, he went up with the Wazir Dandan to the king, that he might take leave of him and ask his permission to depart. The king rose to him and embraced him, and charged him to do justice between his subjects, and bade him make ready for fight against the infidels again in 2 years. Then they took leave of each other, and the king, the fighter for the faith, hight Zibil Khan, having been again exhorted by Zau al-Muluk to deal fairly with his subjects, set out on his journey after the emirs had brought him Mamluks and eunuchs, even to 5,000 in number, who rode after him. The Grand Chamberlain also took horse, as did Bahram, captain of the Daylamites, and Rustam, captain of the Persians, and Tarkish, captain of the Arabs, who attended to do him service, and they ceased not riding with him 3 days' journey by way of honor. Then taking their leave of him, they returned to Baghdad, and the Sultan Zibil Khan and the Wazir Dandan fared on with their suite and troops till they drew near Damascus. Now news was come under the wings of the bird to the notables of Damascus, that King Zau al-Muluk had made Sultan over Damascus a king named Zibil Khan, and surnamed al-Mujahid. So when he reached the city, he found it dressed in his honor, and everyone in the place came out to gaze on him. The new sultan entered Damascus in a splendid progress, and went up to the citadel, where he sat down upon his chair of state, whilst the Wazir Dandan stood in attendance on him, to acquaint him with the ranks of the emirs and their stations. Then the grandees came into him and kissed hands and called down blessings on him. The new king, Zibil Khan, received them graciously, and bestowed on them dresses of honors and various presents and bounties, after which he opened the treasury, and gave largesse to the troops, great and small. Then he governed and did justice, and proceeded to equip the lady Kuzia Fakan, daughter of King Shah Khan, appointing her a litter of silken stuff. Moreover, he furnished the Wazir Dandan equally well for the return journey, and offered him a gift of coin. But he refused, saying, "Thou art near the time appointed by the king, and happily thou wilt have need of money, or after this we may need to seek the funds for the holy war, or what not." Now when the Wazir was ready to march, Sultan al-Mujahid mounted to bid the minister farewell, and brought Kuzia Fakan to him, and made her enter the litter, and sent with her 10 damsels to do her service. Thereupon they set forward, whilst King's fighter for the faith returned to his government, that he might order a fair, and get ready his munitions of war, awaiting such a time as King Zau al-Muluk should send a requisition to him. Such was the case with Sultan Zibil Khan. But as regards the Wazir Dandan, he ceased not faring forward, and finishing off the stages in company with Kuzia Fakan, till they came to Ruba, after a month's travel, and thence pushed on till he drew near Baghdad. Then he sent to announce his arrival to King Zau al-Muluk, who, when he heard this, took horse and rode out to meet them. The Wazir Dandan would have dismounted, but the king conjured him not to do so, and urged his steed till he came up to his side. Then he questioned him of Zibil Khan hight al-Mujahid, whereto the Wazir replied that he was well, and that he had brought with him Kuzia Fakan, the daughter of his brother. At this the king rejoiced, and said to Dandan, "Down with thee, and rest thee from the fatigue of the journey for 3 days, after which come to me again." Replied the Wazir, with joy and gratitude, and betook himself to his own house, whilst the king rode up to his palace, and went in to his brother's daughter, Kuzia Fakan, a girl of 8 years old. When he saw her, he rejoiced in her, and sorrowed for her sire. Then he bade make for her clothes, and gave her splendid jewelry and ornaments, and ordered that she should be lodged with his brother, with his son, Kan Makan, in one place. So they both grew up, the brightest of the people of their time, and the bravest. But Kuzia Fakan became a maiden of good sense and understanding, and knowledge of the issues of events, whilst Khan Makan approved him a generous youth and free-handed, taking no care in the issue of aught. And so they continued till each of them attained the age of 12. Now, Kuzia Fakan used to ride a horseback, and fare forth with her cousin into the open plain, and push forward and range at large with him in the world. And they both learnt to smite with swords and spike with spears. But when they had reached the age of 12, King Zal-Makan, having completed his preparations and provisions and munitions for holy war, summoned the Wazir Dandan and said to him, "Know that I have set mind on thing which I will discover to thee, and I want thine opinion thereon. So do thou with speedy return me a reply." Asked the Wazir, "What is that, O King of the age?" And the other answered, "I am resolved to make my son Khan Makan Sultan, and rejoice in him in my lifetime, and do battle before him till death overtake me. What reckest thou of this?" The Wazir kissed the ground before the king and replied, "Know, O King and Sultan, mine lord of the age and the time, that which is in thy mind is indeed good, save that it is now no tide to carry it out, for two reasons. The first, that thy son Khan Makan is yet of tender years, and the second, that it often befalleth him who maketh his son king in his lifetime to live but a little while thereafter. And this is my reply." Rejoined the king, "Know, O Wazir, that we will make the Grand Chamberlain guardian over him, for he is now one of the family, and he married my sister, so that he is to me as a brother." Quoth the Wazir, "Do what seemeth good to thee. We have only to obey thine orders." Then the king sent for the Grand Chamberlain, whom they brought into the presence together with the lords of the realm, and he said to them, "Ye know that this my son Khan Makan is the first cavalier of the age, and that he hath no peer in striking with the sword and lunging with the lance. And now I appoint him to be sultan over you, and I make the Grand Chamberlain his uncle guardian over him." Replied the chamberlain, "I am but a tree which thy bounty hath planted." And Zal-Makan said, "O chamberlain, verily this my son Khan Makan and my niece Kuzia Fakan are brother's children, so I hereby marry her to him, and I call those present to witness thereof." Then he made over to his son such treasures as no tongue can describe, and going into his sister Nuzhat al-Zaman, told her what he had done. Whereat she was a glad woman, and said, "Verily the twain are my children. Allah preserve thee to them, and keep thy life for them many, many a year." Replied he, "O my sister, I have accomplished in this world all my heart desired, and I have no fear for my son. Yet it were well that thou have an eye on him, and an eye on his mother." And he charged the chamberlain and Nuzhat al-Zaman with the care of his son and niece and wife, and this he continued to do nights and day, till he fell sick, and deemed surely that he was about to drink the cup of death. So he took to his bed, whilst the chamberlain busied himself with ordering the folk and the realm. At the end of the year, the king summoned his son Khan Makan and the Wazir Dandan, and said, "O my son, after my death this Wazir is thy sire, for know that I am about to leave this house of life transitory for the house of eternity. Indeed, I have fulfilled my will of this world, yet there remaineth in my heart one regret, which may Allah dispel through and by my hands." Asked his son, "What regret is that, O father?" Answered Zal-Makan, "O my son, the sole regret of me is that I die without having avenged thy grandfather, Omar bin al-Nu-uman, and thy uncle Sharrakan, on an old woman who they call Zat al-Tawai. But if Allah grant thee aid, sleep not till thou take thy wreck on her, and so wipe out the shame we have suffered at the infidels' hands. And beware of the old hag's wiles, and do what the Wazir Dandan shall advise thee, because he from old time hath been the pillar of our realm. And his son assented to what he said. Then the king's eyes ran over with tears, and his sickness redoubled on him. Whereupon his brother-in-law, the chamberlain, took charge over the country, and being a capable man, he judged and bade and forbade for the whole of that year, while Zau al-Makan was occupied with his malady. And his sickness was sore upon him for 4 years, during which the chief chamberlain sat in his stead, and gave full satisfaction to the commons and the nobles, and all the country blessed his rule. Such was the case of Zau al-Makan and the chamberlain. But as regards to the king's son, he busied himself only with riding and lunging with lance, and shooting with shaft, and thus also did the daughter of his uncle Kuzia Fakan. For he and she wont to fare forth at the first of the day, and return at nightfall, when she would go into her mother, and he would go into his mother, whom he found sitting in tears by the head of his father's couch. Then he would tend his father all night long till daybreak, when he would go forth again with his cousin, according to their wont. Now Zau al-Makan's pains and sufferings were longsome upon him, and he wept, and began versifying with these couplets. Gone is my strength, told is my day of days, and look I am left as thou dost see. An honor's day most honored want to be, and win the race from all my company. Would heaven before my death I might behold my son in seat of empire sit for me, and rush upon his foes to take his wreck, with sway of sword and lance lunge gallantly. In this world and the next I am undone, except the Lord vouchsafe my clemency. When he had ended repeating these verses, he laid his head on his pillow, and closed his eyes and slept. Then saw he in his sleep one who said to him, Rejoice, for thy son shall fill the lands with justice away, and he shall rule them, and him shall the lieges obey. Then he awoke from his dream, gladdened by the good tidings he had seen, and after a few days death smote him. And because of his dying, great grief fell on the people of Baghdad, and simple and gentle mourned for him. But time passed over him, as though he had never been, and Khan Makan's estate was changed, for the people of Baghdad set him aside, and put him and his family in a place apart. Now when his mother saw this, she fell into the sorriest of plights, and said, There is no help, but I go to the Grand Chamberlain, and I must hope for the aidance of the subtle and the all-wise. Then she rose from her place, and betook herself in the house of the Chamberlain, who was now become Sultan, and she found him sitting upon his carpet. So she went in to his wife, Nuzhat al-Zaman, and wept with sore weeping, and said unto him, Verily the dead hath no friend. May Allah never bring you to want as long as your age and the years endure, and may you cease not to rule justly over rich and poor. Thine eyes have heard, and thine ears have heard, and thine eyes have seen all that was of our kingdomship, and honor, and dignity, and wealth, and fair fortune of life and condition. And now time hath turned upon us, and fate in the world hath betrayed us, and wrought in hostile ways with us. Wherefore I come to thee craving thy favors, I from whom favors were craved, for when a man dieth, women and maidens are brought to despisal. And she repeated these couplets. Sufficeth thee death, such marvels can enhance, and severed lives make lasting severance. Man's days are marvels, and their stations are but water pits of misery and mischance. Naught wrings my heart save loss of noble friends, girt round my rings of hard, harsh circumstances. When Nuzhat al-Zaman heard these words, she remembered her brother Zau al-Makan and his son Khan Makan, and making her draw near to her, and showing her honor, she said, Verily at this moment, by Allah, I am grown rich, and thou art poor. Now by the Lord, we did not cease to seek thee out, but we feared to wound thy heart, lest thou shouldest fancy our gifts to thee as alms gift. Withal, whatso weal we now enjoy is from thee and thy husband. So our house is thy house, and our place thy place, and thine is all our wealth, and what goods we have belong to thee. Then she robed her in sumptuous robes, and set apart for her a place in the palace adjoining her own. And they abode therein, she and her son and all delight of life. And Nuzhat al-Zaman clothed him also in king's raiment, and gave to them both especial handmaids for their service. After a little she related to her husband the sad case of the widow of her brother Zal al-Makan, whereat his eyes filled with tears, and he said, Wouldst thou see the world after thee? Look upon the world after other than thyself, then entreat her honorably, and enrich her poverty. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for the day, till it be morrow.